into a poke composition for them to be able to get. They've been able to make it happen when T1 oversteps, so see if they can do it again.
Speaking of which, going to get the stun there onto Cuz, who's going to get devoured. Now that is on cooldown. However, they just choose not to walk up the river, and that is absolutely fine. But I like Gen G's idea. What Gen G can't do is start Baron. If they start Baron, then all of the poke rains on in. What they can do, though, is deny vision and set up the picks around the area.
Yes.
And we'll see how well they do that. We saw Cuz, for the brunt of it, only has a broken stopwatch. Zonya's going to be on the way very soon. As Life picks up a trap, but not going to get speared. Cleared towards the bottom side, has a huge advantage when it comes to farm. He is the secondary carry right now.
He really is. Set has to stay near the Callista non-stop, otherwise you can't get that Fate's Call value, and that means that he can't be threatening anywhere else. And that is something that's so transparent and so predictable for T1. They know that if Set is there, Callista has to be nearby, and if she's not, then you're not going to do any damage. At this point, they know she's backed, and they're going to try to come in here and take away some of this vision. And they're just going to keep chipping away, and it's Rascal who's going to eat the damage. And this passive moment here really benefits T1. Like, their draft is going to scale up better at this stage than Gen G's does. So yeah, Gen G can take vision away and just say, you better come over here and stop us from doing the Baron that we're definitely not doing. And T1 is just not going to be afraid of this. This is a great moment for Kana to go side lane. Look, that's exactly what he's doing. He's gone to the bottom side of the map because you don't need him to be here right now. He's got teleport.
You don't want him to be here, actually. You want to play 4-1. You lose team fights as T1, especially with Rascal being such a big menace in the front line. T1's comp, yes, it can outscale, but it's very different. The way that these two teams win is different. However, I feel like T1 should be able to, in the late game, force impossible situations onto Gen G that Gen G may not necessarily be able to do themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So T1 have fashioned themselves some agency. It's just whether or not they can actually make it happen.
Look at the resources that are pulled down to deal with Kana. And this time he does not overextend. He knew that the rest of Gen G was around Baron, had the back to go deal with him, so he's in a good spot. There's pings showcasing, okay, he's got to be in the area, but we're probably not going to catch him right now. So many resources given over. And this is part of why Kana was picked twice in this game, in the side lane, because while T1 have to kind of group up otherwise 4-man to get that poke done, to make sure they're not picked by the aggressive, very, very strong early Gen G comp. That's what he's going to get value for T1 is in that side lane. He's punished for it, but he's doing his job correctly. And in this later part of the game where you have that Baron tussle, it's just so much more difficult to rotate somebody over there or multiple players over there to deal with him, so he gets away with it.
Yeah, if he wins in a side lane, then it becomes so comfortable for T1, right? Because then they just get to threaten Baron, and then they're going to be able to turn and win a 4 versus 3 is okay. Now it's just body blocking. Spear going to connect. Ruler in a little bit of trouble. Does have a lot of life steal, so should be able to just use this wave to get himself back up. Oh no, Cuz! Going to get taken down solo. The Primal Surge was decent, but that orb will finish him off. That's the jungler dead, and now Gen G might think about heading towards this Baron.
They have good vision control here too, Atlas. I mean, there's nothing for T1. They don't have the vision to actually throw these Pal Stars. They have to throw them blind. Well, they have to contest. They have to contest.
Faker will be able to get extra vision utilizing his portal jump, but 4 versus 5 is so dangerous. Life here looking for a little bit of a flank, and it is just going to be taken by Gen G. They had the Rend, they had the Smite. No way that T1 could answer, and now maybe out of position as Rascal is hurting Teddy and Carrier. The 2-man face breaker is beautiful, and now Carrier needs to try and get over the wall, and he spits Teddy out. He might be safe, but BDD says absolutely not. And he's going to be able to find him exactly the perfect teleport. As Gen G, they're actually just, they're farmers. They're farmers. They're hurting T1 right now.
It's insane. And BDD is playing the series of his life right now. He sets up the pick that goes on to Cuz at the most critical moment. It's proactive plays like this on the Syndra. We've been talking about it all playoffs. Sometimes Syndra feels like a boring pick, sit back and poke, not as interesting as so many of the other mid laners we have, but if you're able to just go forward, hit that Scour of the Week, and set up for a kill like this so consistently as we saw him doing the Orianna in game 1, now on the Syndra, he's making such a big impact. You can actually make that pick into a Baron winning game move, right? Like, okay, yeah, Ruler gets caught here, but look where BDD is. He's just on vision. Cuz, you want to throw another spear? I know where you are. I know where you threw that spear from. Goodbye! And Life has a perfect follow-up. This is so well played from BDD, and this pick gets you a Baron. Now you can't fight.
So good, though. Like, Gen G just knew exactly what T1's options were and played to precisely what they were going to do. Look at Life. He just teleports in and says, bye, Teddy. You had no choice.
This is actually extremely difficult to do, extremely difficult to pull off with this low range comp. but it's proactive plays like that around vision control that can really set you up for success. I mean, Gen G have such a massive lead in this game now. We might be threatening inhibitors.
Yeah.
This is actually crazy. I mean, we're 31 minutes into the game, and they're still winning team fights. They're still getting picks. This should not be happening.
This is the difficulty with the poke comp, though. This is something that we talk about all the time. When you fall behind, the snowball is so much easier. Like, it's a knife's edge style of composition, because now T1, how are you supposed to keep yourself together if Rascal can just walk up and soak everything and he's fine? As this CC needs to come through, right? Like Ruler getting tagged by Teddy, that gives you a lot of time, but Clid getting some spare time with a turret is absolutely not what you want, as now T1 stretched a little bit thin, and Gen G sieging this one beautifully despite their lower range.
They are in such a good position here to just take these turrets out. 30 seconds left on the Baron buff. Oh, look at
flashing on in, finds the face breaker. Faker has to flash out once again. It's going to be Rascal there driving the train forward, and Faker nowhere that he could go. Dawning Shadow isn't saving anyone as Carrier falls down as well. Teddy does have a fair bit of damage. There are lower health bars, but Gen G just look inevitable right now.
They look like they want to end the game right now, Teddy.
Oh dear, Rascal just standing in front of him. Yes, that is a hell of a lot of damage. BDD, you have been so good this game. Cuz and Canna against the world. Can they actually do this? But I don't think the answer is yes. Nexus turret number 2 goes down. Gen G move to 2-0 against T1 in the playoffs.
What an unbelievable start here for Gen G, and BDD makes it happen again. Decisive plays on the Orianna, decisive plays on the Syndra, and this is the Gen G that fans were waiting for. This was the Gen G fans were hands clasped and praying for, because you never know what form you're going to see from Gen G in a best of 5. You never know if Gen G is going to show up against T1. It feels like the mental block that this team has had historically against T1 is just wiped away. We have a clean slate here tonight, and Gen G with 2 completely different styles of composition. Game 1, very slow, extreme late game scaling. Game 2, very much about early game control, feeding the Kalista and taking hard engages, and they succeed against a poke comp. At 30 minutes in the game is when they strike and win, and that's just so unlikely, that's so unrealistic, but they got the advantages early enough to make it happen. And Atlas, it starts to feel like we might actually have the one-sided series that no one predicted.
Absolutely not. I alluded to it earlier, right? I feel like a lot of us were on the T1 hype train a little bit more than we otherwise could. There was good reason for it, but we knew Gen G were capable. It's just so many of us couldn't believe. I'm starting to
believe.
I'm waiting for like the Reddit thread where you just see Gen G BDD has disconnected, Longzhu BDD has reconnected, because this is like that extraordinary final. This is what we know BDD is capable of. And it's just so good to see it finally in a playoff. Even if they get reverse swept now, I'm happy. Like, this is what we wanted. We wanted to see peak Gen G versus T1. I want to see now peak T1 come out, because I think that is going to be an extraordinary third game. That being said, it may still be a 3-0.
It's interesting the psychosis of this too, in terms of these 2 drafts for Gen G, because in the first game you punish T1 for playing passive because they don't have agency, they have to sit back, and then you're like, well, the game's mine then. Then T1, the first thing that's in everyone's mind is maybe we played a little bit too passive with that game. And in this game, you're caught in a similar situation where the map is taken, you're behind, you try to be aggressive, then you get picked, you get blown up, you lose Baron. Like, the mental gymnastics that have to be going through the T1 players' minds right now after too passive to a little bit too far forward, it's insane. We're going to take a look at our post-game, see who did the damage here, Atlas, but
it's crazy. Like, I actually love the fact that Gen G, they play the reactionary comp first, and then they play the proactive comp, and it's completely different styles. Both of them played very, very well. Still relatively slow, but T1 haven't been able to punish Gen G. Their defensive play has just been really, really good. And you can see this time it is Teddy doing a lot of work. Of course, Canna tripling the damage of a Scion is something that's pretty obvious, but once again, BDD, extraordinary on the Syndra. This is a champion that, you know, skill expression is a little bit harder because we've seen so many players do it. The gameplay button exists and we call it that for a reason. But his flanks, his positioning, his picks, his timings, so good.
His game sense, man. He knew where the spear came from. He was like, and he rotated right over and he says, if you're looking for a second spear, I've got news for you. You see that second spear come through, that's a kill, that's Baron, that's game. Gen G on match point.
Yep. BDD, of course, he brought Cuz to a royal road and he might be sending him home early in the playoffs. We are going to go to a short break. When we come back, possibly the final game of the series. Definitely match point for Gen G. Don't go anywhere.
밀말 듯?
일로 봐.
밀렸다 얘네.
예스턴? 조이 필요하다, 조이 맞아.
나 포함만 볼게 얘네.
조이 높을. 깎게. 캔디부터 가자, 캔디부터.
샌드 노플이야.
오케이.
바텀
오케이,
오케이.
오케이.
미드까지 쓸래?
가시죠.
나 가보래
바텀으로 갈래?
바텀으로 가자.
일단 피부터 줘.
바텀으로 가자. 바텀으로 가자.
예스턴? 오케이, 끝.
한번 볼게 얘.
세나 보자. 세나 높을. 서서. 킹 바르다. 제이스.
니달리가 타워부터 해줘. 타워부터.
오케이. 타워부터 하자, 타워.
내가 타워할게. 타워 해줘.
타워자.
빅무빙 끝났다.
끝나자. 제이스 높을.
나이스. 3판까지 붙이자.
오케이.
나이스.
Nothing can stop a determined cat. Begin 5ing protocol. All will bow before the rightful overlords of the galaxy. Cats. Enemy detected.
Come on, you! Let's dance!
Enemy targets will be destroyed.
The groove flows through me. Thank you, groove.
Don't talk to the
Genji is already on a match point by taking 2 games in a row, and they looked even stronger in game number 2. Genji highly prioritized that Kalista pick and then locked in Set as their bottom duo. And we could see the power of those two duo, and I can say Genji prepped really hard, drafting around their bottom lane. And T1, just like Genji did, they banned away, even though Jinx, still they countered it with Senna and Tompkins. Usually, Kalista, in a vacuum, you know, she is usually powerful together with Thresh. And once they saw Senna Tompkins locked in by T1, they just skipped the Thresh pick. They rather rotated it to Seth, and they had very high priority in lane because they were able to get the Drake as well, which means Senna cannot get that extra souls coming out from the dragon as well. Props over to Genji for preparing this hard for something unexpected on the bottom lane. And Tompkins is not really easy to play up against Seth because this champion actually counters this Tompkins Devour because he can re-engage every time he puts his AD carrier back to safety. So looking at the Senna Tompkins and Kalista Seth matchup, well, in the later game, Senna Tompkins can have their power spike once Tompkins gets enough armor items, but Genji tried something new over here. They actually didn't match the lane up against Senna Tompkins because they knew that in the later phase, Senna Tompkins definitely has the edge over Kalista Seth. I think Genji prepared really hard in order to bring some counter strategy into that poke comp coming out from T1. Now let's take a look at this first highlight where Raska was having some hard time in both games. In game number 2, especially, he had to teleport back after dying very early and purchasing no item. He was playing under a huge pressure, but after that he hit level 6 and he was able to, you know, do a fair bit of a tanking work up against Chase. And heading to the mid and late game, Sion can actually exert pressure up against Jace. It was a huge turnaround coming out from Raska, but something that was expected looking at this champion matchup. T1 had no vision around their side lanes, so Jace was pushing the lane under huge pressure. And together with Graves, Sion was able to chase down that Jace with this active item as well. And BDD, the protection coming out from this Syndra was really heartwarming as well. Flashing in order to block the damage coming out from Zoe was really impressive. I think BDD today, he's been on his best form. And Senna and Tompkins, they are really strong if they have some pressure around their side lanes, you know. If their mid and top can 1-3-1 effectively, Senna and Tompkins is super strong because they can make cross-map play. But looking at the highlight, you know, T1 had no vision around their side lanes, and they were not able to gain any vision around that jungle because Genji already had a bit of a lead at that point in the game. Whereas Genji was able to show off their teamwork. And let's take a look at the second highlight where BDD was able to once again pop off as a main character of a team fight. So Nidalee gets rid of the ward, so which means she reveals herself to Genji's vision, whereas Syndra was hiding outside of T1's vision, so Syndra was able to snipe that Nidalee from the darkness. And they clean up the kill, and Syndra gets her reset after they finished that Baron. It was a very easy Baron for Genji because there was no opponent jungler on the side of T1. And as soon as the Baron got picked up, BDD instantly finds a reset, and we can see the ping going onto that flank ward. BDD and Genji together was setting up for that wraparound team fight. during the regular split, there were some moments where Gen.G didn't find enough synergy and teamwork, but today I think they were moving as one team, so unified, and they looked as a perfect team together. We are seeing another level of Gen.G today, and BDD was the clutch player on the side of Gen.G for sure. Now let's take a look at the player of the game, whether it's going to be BDD or whether it's going to be someone else. It is going to be BDD on Syndra, no doubt. 206 KDA. It's not about BDD doubling the damage coming out from the opponents, but he knew how to suffocate the opponent based on the macro play, and also some of them clutch moments in order to save his teammates was really on point. BDD today looks so chill. He's not in a rush. He knows when he has to go in, but he also knows when he has to just, protect their teammates. He always had firm control of lane, and that much of a winning mentality is actually a huge advantage in terms of a best of 5 series. I think BDD is definitely super calm and collected, performing at this playoffs round number 2. I mean, Tom can definitely have an ability to save its teammate, but you cannot save or devour 5 players at a time, and the opponents are diving onto you for 5 different directions. And BDD picks up POG back-to-back today, and I think Gen.G found another hero on their side. T1 really needs to come back and stop Gen.G's momentum, so let's move on to game number 3.
Thank you so much, Jisun, as per usual, for the outstanding translation of the analyst desk. And here we are, back again for match point. To be perfectly honest, a lot of me was expecting a match point here in Game 3. However, I think that the team name is certainly different to a lot of the expectations. This has been a big overperformance for Gen.G.
It really has.
I think that there's also been a little bit of underperforming on the side of T1's side. Gentlemen, that was just on your screen there, Cuz having a bit of an invisible game in game number 2. Poke compositions are certainly a tightrope, so maybe it's about going back to the drawing board, by building yourself one of these teamfight compositions, one of these skirmish style of compositions with some early game agency, and allow T1 to go back to that style that made them so good, which was control first turret blood, get yourself all of that extra gold, snowball from there in the way that you know that you can, because their macro play is so good if they have that tempo lead and that advantage.
Yeah, they've chosen blue side, I believe, for this what could be potentially our last game, and there's a lot of priority picks you can get. If they're given the opportunity to pick the Thresh or the Seraphine, you can look towards that late game carrying potential, but also, something like Aphelios Thresh get ahead, and then kind of all in on going to late game, unlike in game 1. But as we pointed out, as we go into this third draft, Gen.G showed us 2 completely different styles of play, and now they might even be able to throw a curveball. It will be blue side here for T1. They could even throw a curveball here and play, something like Jin Zhao or something else that they have prepared. Odin and the coaching staff of Gen.G made it very clear in pre-game interviews that they are willing to pull out all the stops for this series. They don't care how much they have to show. They just want to go to the finals no matter what. But already up 2-0 in this series, you don't necessarily have to throw a curveball, but T1 have just been one step behind the curve in both drafts. And in game number 2, I really thought they had a massive advantage, but they couldn't execute on it. And I think it's true that Cuz definitely did not make the same amount of impact that you need him to have. As Danny looks on, a lot of pressure on this guy all season long. He's changed all the rosters, he's very confident in the roster they've settled on here. But to go out 0-3, if they lose this game after only one prediction for Gen.G by Nofe out of all analysts in Korea, would be insane. It would be absolutely crazy. As we will see, it looks like the priority on the Udyr once again.
Well, this time it is going to be the Udyr. The Thresh remains available, and this is something that, is the toss-up, right? This is the gamble that T1 took in game number 1, but the other way around. So, Clid now thinking about going towards the Olaf. That worries me. Just a little bit. I hope that they do have a bit of Orianna priority here.
Yeah,
so that they can enable the Olaf as the game goes on. However, I just don't like the pick. That being said, still going to be locked away.
Also, well, they're going to take the Kalista. I was going to say Rel Olaf is also not a bad option either, but they will take the Kalista. They're going to go down the same path in terms of that early game control. the Thresh is available. I would love to see T1 go into something like the Aphelios Thresh, but then actually draft for that later part, hit the second part of this draft, very much more better scaling-wise. I don't think this is going to be where the solution lies in the blind Jace pick this early on the draft.
Yeah, blind
Unless it's
Jace
a crazy bait or something like that.
It's very interesting.
Ooh, I'm not a huge fan of this one.
Jace can theoretically be flexed. Faker could play it if he wants to, but doesn't feel like a Faker pick. It feels like Canna just trying to get a hold of one of the champions that he does feel comfortable on. Is this T1 actually just waiting and allowing, you know, Gen G to pick their bottom lane, and then Teddy and Kerry are picking accordingly? Could be an option here, but Gen G are on red side. They have the opportunity of grabbing their support in their last pick and giving their Kalista the best time possible. This is very odd, it's just blind picks all over the place here for T1.
But they're blind picks that work well around the vision control that Udyr will give you. It's another poke composition for T1. They didn't have the Udyr in the previous set. They had Nidalee, which is, again, not terrible at clearing wards, but not the same amount of power. And it feels like we're going to see a slightly different version, actually, of Game 2 here in Game 3. So the Sion pick come through once again for Gen G. And now T1 have the opportunity to kind of warp how this bottom lane is played in terms of the supports they can ban away for the Kalista here. You know, Tahm Kench, definitely somebody you can, you know, you could take away. Set, definitely going to be removed, you imagine.
I think the Set is 100% going to be a ban. I think live Set is too good. Remember, you did see the stats for his Set so far this season. It is 3-4, including this game, or last game.
Yep.
Before this, though, it was undefeated, 8-0 or something like that, moving into this season. So definitely worth the respect. Is Tahm Kench going to be taken away from T1?
They, you know, they take away the Tahm Kench, like I was saying earlier, so it makes it a lot more difficult to play that Senna comp if you're T1. And, I mean, I'm thinking about other options here if you're really going to go all in on the poke. I mean, something like a Jhin ban isn't even out of the question. Ezreal, another opportunity that T1 have to take away.
I really like Ezreal here. Yeah, I really like Ezreal.
I think Gen G should consider banning it against T1 here. And that's another one of those stable bot picks that you have for T1 in this poke-based composition. They'll take away the Thresh, though, which removes a lot of low mobility champions from the equation.
Yep, it makes it harder to pick something like Varus that Teddy has been going towards. Certainly another one of his poke options. And once again, T1 looks like they're building towards that poke composition, as that set that we called for is going to be banned.
Super easy to predict how this is going to go just based on the last game. So it becomes easy to remove some of those options. Really like the Orianna ban. This will probably force BDD once again onto the Syndra. Nico being hovered here.
This is a flex. This is actually really interesting. Can theoretically be going mid, but it is just going to be Syndra. So Nico Kalista being flirted with on the side of Gen G, but Syndra will be locked away. Teddy with his center in mind, but this would add a lot more CC. I like Ashe.
The Ashe is actually pretty interesting, but the Samira is a big departure, actually, from T1. So what T1 is looking to do with this comp now is to poke everybody low and then Inferno trigger to clean everybody up. I mean, you can chip away and then have hard engage with the Rel. Samira comes through to clean things up. It's a pretty, you know, straightforward team composition here for T1, but it's really reliant on having that extra lead, having that extra vision that Udyr is going to need to have.
I want Gragas so bad. I mean, the Alistar works into Rel as well, but I think Gragas would be so strong because you can also deny the Rel, and Gragas Kalista is so strong. Life was also a fantastic Gragas support in the past, has been foregoing it recently. Alistar definitely is going to be one of these frontliners that can soak a little bit, especially with his Unbreakable Will. But Gen G have themselves a different composition. I don't like the Olaf so much, but we'll be able to help them out in the early stages. We heard the analyst desk talking about the fact that Olaf is there to sort of mitigate some early game trials. I personally don't think he does it well enough to justify it. But Gen G, if they can make it work, who is going to judge? And T1, though, it just like, I don't see where the augmentation is of the poke with this Samira-Rel combination that they've locked in. Are they going to be able to do enough in order to find these pop-off team fights? That's my question.
It's going to be hard, you know, and if I could remove the nameplates and if I hadn't watched Game 2, I would really like T1's draft. I think on paper it works very well. You chip away, then you ult in with Carry as Rel, and then Samira cleans up. You have Faker, who's been able to hit Battle Stars consistently, but we saw how well Gen.G can play this composition, how aggressively the BDD will play the Syndra. Look for those picks. The Fates calling we saw, or Fates calls we saw from Ruler just previously were amazing as well, and Alistar is another support that works extremely well with those types of hard engage. Not the same way that Set does, but he can set up a pick for you. You can get BDD, these opportunities for follow-up CC. Ruler does massive damage. You get picks onto the composition that T1 are running, and it falls apart very quickly. But I think on paper, if you're not behind this T1, this is still a very strong poke composition, but they have to execute better than we saw last game. And I like the adaptation of the Udyr. Get that vision control and use it to control some of those parts of the map that you were fighting blind on in Game 2.
Yep. We need to see Carrier also get a lot of proactivity early on this Rel, who does have a lot of impact. Look for those Herald fights. Look for that Rel to be able to dictate terms. And then if they can get that snowball, hit that mid-game spike, things certainly can work out. But here we are onto the Rift for game number 3, match point for Gen.G. as they get red side yet again. Should theoretically make it a little bit more difficult. This is Gen.G's preferred side, of course.
I feel like the execution of Udyr, you know, he doesn't have the exact same sort of impact damage-wise that Nidalee does, but he has a much easier execution in terms of setting up picks. Against the Scion, you're not going to be able to really get that kill with Jace necessarily unless the Scion is way overextended, because you don't have the follow-up spear where you can hit it without being under threat of turret. You kind of have to all in more on that. So, you know, it's not going to be great in that regard, but it could maybe potentially net you an advantage in the mid lane. So that's something to look out for. But I think the real story of the Udyr here is going to be about that mid to late game vision control. Warding, clearing wards up, because that's what Faker needs in order to hit those sleeps, to set up for those picks.
I think a little bit more focused mid lane as well would be a good idea. BDD has so far been deathless throughout this series. Of course, not a lot of Gen.G players have died so much this series, but BDD has been largely untouched. And so trying to put him on the back foot could be an idea, at least mentality-wise, in this series. Is Rascal and Canna going to go at it once again, see whether Rascal has a better or worse time.
You know what's interesting about this pick, too, on the Samira? I think a lot of people will dislike it and discredit it right away because Samira has gone through some significant changes. She got buffed a little bit recently, but she was also very nerfed. She has a pretty low win rate in the LCK. And also, it's not Teddy's playstyle. He's kind of a late-game carry-style player, generally speaking. He's not a mid-game, you know, extreme hard-engaged type player. I think he's 0-1 on the Samira. We saw just a moment ago, so he's only played it once, even this season.
Yep.
He was on the bench during all the time where she was popular.
Yep,
but
she definitely playing most of it.
And, you know, it's a champion that doesn't feel like it suits Teddy, and it feels outdated. But I think for the way that T1's comp chips down against Gen.G and then you can clean up, I think it suits the composition very well. It's just going to be about the execution, again, here for T1.
Yeah, actually, like, a reset champion in the AD carry position sort of makes some sense when you do have a lot of catch potential, a lot of blow-up in theory that you can get with a Jace and a Zoe. See a bit of a wraparound here as Canna slightly overextended. The Ghost already comes out. Acceleration gate. You can see Canna trying to go for the 1-for-1 as the Undertow is going to land, but they're just happy with a flash, and Clid is just going to run back towards his Krugs and say that it didn't even cost me any time.
Definitely ended up being pretty well handled there by Kana. You know, ends up losing his flash, which can be a problem for follow-up rotations that we do see down. It's going to make him a little bit wary about pushing too far forward when he's trying to chip at this Scion, but ends up being, you know, a little bit of wasted time here for a jungler that, you know, yeah, sure, he just
This is super cool from Kaz. Yeah, Clid spots him.
He's up a level.
Yeah, this is really rough. Undertow actually misses as well.
He's dead.
There's no flash available. That's just going to be Kaz nicking First Blood away. Great positioning, and look at this. Kaz has a pretty invisible game in Game 2.
Yeah.
It all around here as there's the Attract Repel on the bottom side. Ruler has to flash to get himself out of the way, and now Life in a bit of trouble. He has his flash available, but an explosive start to this one is now Rascal. This is a familiar situation as Kaz is going to get knocked up. He's underneath this turret. Canna is going to go down, so it's a trade in the end. And Rascal has teleport available here as well and will be able to tidy up this minion wave, so may not have to use it, we'll see.
Yeah, that's the kind of play that I'm talking about with the Udyr that's different from the Nidalee. You really have to get under the turret to make that play happen onto the Scion, but it ends up being proactive once again. He's almost doubled Klid's farm in this game because he was, he's just a faster clearing champion. Then gets the impact in the top lane twice. One onto Klid, and then of course one onto the Rascal. It's a trade, but it really pushes the tempo advantage here into T1's favor quite significantly. And this is the power of Udyr that you're going to get, is almost guaranteed, easy to execute pressure. And you talked about the invisibility of Cuz in the last game. That's absolutely true, but proactive plays like this that are very easy to execute, you can't really mess this up. It's actually a mental game, right? Like, you know, Monte Cristo, he talks about Udyr a lot, even though he's not a LCK commentator anymore, as the old man hands champion. Cuz is still very young, right? And he's a very mechanically gifted player, but you have a bad execution game like the last one, then you play Udyr. It's like night and day, the difference in terms of how easy it is to pull off. Ends up being a trade here, but you'll take those.
It was definitely optimistic as Cuz makes his way down bot lane, and you can see that actually Ruler and Life have managed to win a couple of trades in a row. Control ward goes down, and Cuz, it is his jungle this time.
Yeah, certainly is. Looks like T1 rotating around this Infernal Drake. It's an early pickup that can be, you know, it's going to be useful all game long for T1's poke composition. So definitely something they'd love to grab early if they can, but it's Olaf jungle. A little bit tough to lock that one down early. At least they have the vision. Gen.G do, so they can keep Olaf farming right now, so he doesn't fall even further behind. He's actually managed to catch up quite significantly.
Yeah, doing actually a pretty decent job. Got a couple of camps to pick up as well. Now finally going for his reset, so this is where Cuz should probably surge ahead, who's got his Gromp and his Krog to take down now. His Life just says goodbye to Carrier, tanks up a turret shot for fun, and looks like Teddy makes his way back. He's got himself a Vampiric Scepter heading towards his shield bow as soon as he can find it. And he should be able to sweep up most of these minions pretty comfortably. Ruler, similar back, but does have a slight AD advantage with his longsword in his pocket. That's a cute little knock-up. Rascal as Cuz walks over a ward. Rascal knows about this, but he has no flash. Level 6 is available though, so of course the train can just head on forward, and no flashes available here from Canna or Cuz to get in the way.
That's such an important ward. Without that, I think Rascal dies here, without the information, unless he has an insane game sense, just feels it out.
The other thing is this dragon now goes over because Cuz reveals himself.
Well, T1 are going to fight for this. So he's here.
Going to dive in. That's actually pretty scary. And of course, Cuz is going to roam on over, and with the advantage that he picked up for himself, Gen.G. And with BDD only just resetting. A little bit unfortunate. They started it off hoping that it was going to work, but I think I myself actually underestimated quite the movement speed of Mr. Udyr.
Well, you know, I mean, these are the kinds of things that can happen, and T1 were very aware of this. They knew that if they were going to make an aggressive trade like that happen on the top side, that the Drake play was going to be there. Very fast rotation from Keria, even himself, to come over there and slow that down, and T1 are even going to steal this blue buff away. This is very much it almost feels like someone in the T1 house was like, all right, guys, that was not our level. We need to play better in game 2, because the individual performances we're seeing, and even the team-based macro decisions we're seeing from T1 here, are significantly better than what we saw in game 2. They're just not letting Gen.G get that same early tempo advantage.
No, absolutely, and I think this is beautiful. This is how T1 have won games, right? It is with snowballs. It is with being able to put on so much pressure early. It's utilizing the fact that Cuz has come into this roster and played above even his own high standards throughout this season. And he didn't manage to do that in game number 2. Is certainly starting off this game on the right foot. As they have a 400 gold advantage. They have themselves that Infernal Drake as well. I'm a little bit nervous because we have to roll another 50-50. But that's okay.
Yeah, definitely a pretty good chances that it's not really a 50-50 actually behind the scenes with Atlas here on the casting desk. But I'm concerned about Gen.G's composition, because this is not Ruler having, you know, a massive lead. Yeah, he has a 20 CS lead.
20 CS ain't bad.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not going to be the massive lead we saw game 1, or rather game 2, the previous game of the Kalista. And their composition still has similar range problems that we saw in the last game. And, you know, we saw a very early lead here for T1 with this Udyr pick. They're getting the extra value on the top side of the map. Feels like a very different version of the same styles of compositions here, but T1 are actually making it work in fairly dominant fashion. Like, yeah, it's only a few hundred gold, 200 at the moment, in the lead. But the problems that the composition faced in the last game with minion waves blocking them, they had no map control, they had no vision, that's not going to plague them in this game.
Well, Faker does find the point-blank bubble, and now BDD going to take a lot of damage. He did manage to clear up all the minions, though, so was probably looking for a reset. Anyway, but still, definitely good news here for Faker.
Just love watching Faker hit every CS under the turret.
Yep,
Zoe very hard.
Was beautifully done.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks if you've never played Zoe. Probably don't, actually. You're not going to do those.
Oh, Cuz going to be able to grab this Rift Scuttler pretty comfortably, and then we'll see where he delivers the Rift Herald to. It's interesting, because very different things have happened this game, and I think a lot of people will look towards that Rift Herald sort of being... okay. The Rift Herald being stolen away, being a huge problem for T1, really put their momentum off, right? Because they wanted to be able to get a little bit more early power and open up the map on their side rather than the other way around. And I think that did shape a lot of what happened in Game 2. Now being able to get it is very strong. However, Rascal hasn't been nearly as punished as he was last time. A trade is definitely much better for the side.
Oh, look at this. Speaking of Rift Herald, I think this gets planted in mid almost 100%. And they look to set up for even a skirmish around it.
Oh, somehow Cuz actually snuck in there.
He's going to steal some of these. Like, it's so easy to just Phoenix stance and then slap a whole set of baby chickens away.
Yeah.
It's like almost unfair, especially when you know this matchup so well. You know Clid starts it, everyone gets half health, you steal it away. He gets extra vision here, he's got the fast track, even gets to clear this ward.
Oh, bubble goes wide. No punishment, as Rascal, speaking of punishment, is going to say, no, that is my control ward.
They know that now Clid is on the Krugs. They're not going to take this moment to drop the Rift Herald, but I think getting that first turret for Zoe, the Wolf turret as we like to call it, and all the extra gold over to Faker to accelerate his power spike in this game is definitely the name of the game here.
Yeah.
Spotted out.
Oh, Kerry actually doing the wraparound. They may not actually know that he was there. That was very, very cute. We'll have to have a look at bottom side, maybe, in just a little while to see whether he is going to pop out. But actually shows himself, as you can see on the map. Not going to find anything cheeky from it.
See that Cuz was considering maybe making a play on the top side, but thinks better of it, plays passively. And you see the trade in the mid lane. Mid lane is back in alternately, so free waves. You see the ping come down from Faker. And it's you know, the next play here for T1 is to set up a Rift Herald in mid right before the Drake. I mean, that would be ideal. But unfortunately, they don't have enough of an advantage to necessarily pull that off. We do see the rotation in now. Check vision. The Rift Herald is the easiest way to make sure that this Drake goes T1's way. They have not committed it, though.
No, I haven't actually utilized it at all. As here towards the bottom side is exactly where T1 are positioning themselves. 4 versus 3 will be the situation as BDD still dealing with that minion wave. Rascal has teleport, as does Canna. Certainly important if this is actually something that both of these teams want to fight for.
This Rift Herald is about to time out, Atlas.
Yeah, right.
I'm like actually starting to get a little bit worried. T1, you've got an advantage here. You have an edge. You have to use it.
Well, they want to use it so that they can actually get control over this Drake, as there's the flash forward, and Faker
Huge
just
mistake.
gets baited by BDD. That's a solo kill, and they were trying to give Faker the money for this Rift Herald, as well as now Clid comes on forward. This could be even worse.
Oh, this is a disaster. I don't even think that this one's getting connected.
Oh
It's not. They deny
God.
it. And you don't find the window to use the Rift Herald. You overextend. Faker gets baited by BDD, who once again is dominating the mid lane. And this is inexcusable. Gen G should not be able to walk away with this Ocean Drake here for free. We'll find out if it's Cloud in a second. Nope.
It's just a game of inches, though,
Yeah,
right?
it really is.
Hopefully Jonas Strong throws that on massive slow-mo so we can see exactly what happened. I won the 50-50 as well, as we get a relevant Drake.
Yep.
As our soul is now Rascal's looking for Cuz. Slowing down an Udyr is an odd choice, absolutely. But he might be able to deny the steal. Should be able to.
Yep, looks like it.
Okay, Cuz just waits around the side, as you do. It's going to reset, but of course Rascal does not want to give up all of these minions.
Yeah, massive opportunity cost if you actually stay there. You're going to lose all this wave. Well, he's just going to walk up and bully Kana here on the turret.
Actually, Rascal has a very large health bar, still had his ult available, so kind of has to be a little bit more careful than that. But this is, man, there has been BDDs in the past that would not have made that play.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, I really do want to see the replay. I'm sure we're getting it, like, super duper well edited and
yeah,
nice
that's
angle.
Jonas Strong's like making sure that he has the timing just right.
It's going to be cinematic, okay?
Oh, yeah. It'll be
Here
like
we go.
a mad movie. Here we go.
All right, so we'll watch this one more time. So Faker actually teleports forward, gets the sleep, hits max range paddle star here, and then BDD just flash forward, presses the gameplay button after the scout of the week. Like, it's just that simple. You just don't trust that BDD is going to hit the scout of the week. I mean, that's Faker's underestimation there.
Yeah, it actually, to be perfectly honest, wasn't super mega amazing, but it
was
a
basic.
little bit of a miscalculation from Faker to understand that BDD, of course, had the ability to do that. Yes, he executes perfectly, but it's Syndra, right? Like, you press all your buttons and hope that the gameplay is going to be enough to take them all down.
I mean, you get Scar of the Week under turret like that, your health bar is so low as Zoe, like, you're just not going to be able to survive. Is Cuz trying to come up here with kind of trying to trade aggressively, not going to happen, though. This game has been very much more action-packed in the earlier stages than our last two, right? We've, like, quadrupled the kills.
Yeah, and it has to be, right? Because this is the game where T1 really have to make moves. It's not like we've handshaken on 2 scaling drafts or anything like that. T1 definitely want to be making moves early. They've opened up the map. They've made sure that they had pushing lanes in as many places as possible. Unfortunately, the rule of Callista effect is in effect, and therefore he's going to be having a pretty good time on the bottom side. You can see the heart monitor is moving closer and closer as we go on to it actually getting towards Gen G. As you can see, T1 with a slight advantage now. I just don't know whether it's going to be enough with things like the Scion here as Rascal caught out of position by Canna.
He got baseball batted back, so he has
to...
Oh, the block!
Flash in front, but he's stunned for a little bit too long. Clid running on forward, no mana on Rascal, so we can't exactly help him out. But Clid's going to be able to stride breaker his way out, and Cuz not going to be safe underneath this turret as, Ruler's going to move on over. Teddy shows himself as well.
Yeah, you don't push this any further, but you can get a Rift Herald out of this. I mean, this is a really nice play from T1. You get aggressive, you catch Rascal, you force a big rotation for Gen G, but you have a bigger one on your plate. Now nobody's getting side lane pressure, right? Ruler is not in the bottom lane. If Ruler's in the bottom lane here, nobody likes this play that much, but he stays.
That's a teleport coming on in. Life looking for the pulverize, finds it there, gives Petty back to the rest of Gen G. Bladewell trying to get some value, and he's going to get stunned. Yep, gameplay for you, Mr. Teddy. Because now Carrier trying to get out of there, Cuz as well, just booping whoever he can. That shot blast was decent. Just don't know whether it's quite going to be enough here because they've already lost Teddy, and that is their end of team fight win condition, right?
Oh man, Gen G just slid under the door on this one. I mean, it was the last possible moment they could contest. They handled it so well.
Where's the Eye of the Herald? Who's got it? Where is it?
Wow.
What's happening? Is it still there?
I'm not 100% sure.
Where'd it go? Herald? Shirley?
We have to go back and watch because...
Did Shirley retire? What happened?
There's 3 minutes left on her before her retirement, but... Yeah, I think it just wasn't picked up there.
Or was it used already? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think it just didn't get picked up there. But like the moment where you see this fight really go wrong is when BD is able to get on top of Teddy. Teddy used his Blade Whirl very early on in the fight because he panicked, and then you can't win that fight anymore. Teddy down. And this is just Gen G understanding just how far they can push this composition, even with the Fate's Call not connecting. Let's see what happens to this Rift Herald here. I'm not actually sure who got it. Because I thought Cuz got it, but yeah, he does. And he just can't pick it up. So Teddy is off on the side here. Has to use Blade Roll early, so he gets caught by BDD. No one is able to get in here on top of this eye, so it doesn't get picked up. And that's just T1 losing everything they committed to, losing Teddy as well, and losing a huge amount of tempo in this game. And once again, BDD finds that window to get value. Doesn't even have to flash.
Ooh, bit greedy, not actually going to press the Ragnarok button as in comes the train and everything misses until the train gets there, and more gameplay for you, T1. Cuz now going to get caught out of position as well, and Gen G. This is definitely a cold ball rolling down a hill right now as there's the exhaust. Life just desperately wanted to give this kill over to Ruler and will do so comfortably. Canna trying to get what he can on the bottom side.
I mean, it's just not going to be the same, it's not going to be equivalent to value. They're going to get a ton of value here in mid as well, and this is, Atlas, quite frankly, the cold ball, of frozen rain droplets rolling down the hill. I mean, this game is starting to get out of control here. Gen G is still behind by 300 gold, but their execution of these skirmishes gives proof again to the idea that T1 cannot execute this poke composition very well against Gen G. Gen G are just pressing the ult buttons, walking through BDs, hitting these Scout of the Weeks. You're seeing really high agency given to Rascal on the Scion. They're finding these picks, they're finding the stuns, the CC that they have, and T1 is just never able to properly utilize their range. This is just an overextension here from T1. It's clear that you hit with the sleep here, Faker. Unfortunately, he's a bit tanky, and he just gets taken out by BDD once again. Cuz is caught, and this is a fight you should never be taking off of a greedy Paddle Star attempt from Faker.
Yeah.
And sure, yeah, you have Kana on the bottom side of the map, so you feel like, okay, well, if we end up losing the skirmish, we're at least getting that value. But if you lose 2 people, and then the mid turret, it's not a good trade. The mid turret just barely standing, I think, on its last legs here. But a lot of damage done, and Gen.G are going to get the streak.
Yeah, it's starting to all stack up, is what it's feeling like, Wolf, as this is going to be Rift Scuttler taken down as well as this Mountain Drake, the first one of the game for Gen.G.
And this is Mountain Soul with Scion Olaf.
Oh god.
Against a poke composition. It's so much more difficult with all the extra resistances stacking up, even with the shields here too, to get those kills on the Samira. Unfortunately, Teddy hasn't been able to have that opportunity to really have an Inferno trigger 5v5 team fight pop-off moment because T1 are trying to retake tempo and making aggressive plays solo and getting punished for it. We're not seeing those 5v5 fights because they're playing into Gen.G's comp, which has so much CC, which is so terrifying. You have to show more respect. You have to play this game a little bit slower for T1, and I think that's the mentality that was kind of broken after game 1. They played so slow and too slow because their comp didn't allow them to play any faster. And in games 2 and 3, they're struggling.
It's so hard because they actually do have to up the tempo, right? But they have to up the tempo
safely
and do it intelligently at the same time. And sometimes when the onus is on you to make choices, you feel desperate in when to make those choices, right? Because those opportunities do need to come around. Unfortunately, it just hasn't quite been there for T1 so far. And this is... I'm starting to feel like the ruler effect is coming in just in time for playoffs as well, right? It was, they had to ride the line. Do they ban the Callista? Do they ban the Jinx? They didn't have enough room to ban both. And then they just snap it up once again. And he hadn't been playing it so much in the regular season. It was getting banned almost every game. However, we hadn't been reminded about what ruler can do or what life can do when he gets so much value. As BDD presses R and Faker loses half of his health, and the more and more BDD gets gold, the more and more difficult it is for T1, right? Because BDD's almost at one-shot territory. It's very binary, but it's still just a fact.
And not to mention that BDD is playing a very good series. You know, this is
amazing.
This is a player that you don't always say is going to make the incredible calls on the Scour of the Week's late game, but his Orianna banned against him twice. He makes the plays, and he's doing fantastically on this champion right now. And T1, it feels like they're falling further and further behind to the wayside here. They're not able to make any proactive plays. Their macro is failing them because they're trying to be so aggressive in trying to get these picks when their comp isn't really based around that, right? Trying to commit so much to get BDD, for example, in this case.
I mean, yeah, it's hard, right? Because it's like, it's poke, they do have pick options if you do find, like, the bubbles and things like that, but they've taken one outer turret on the bottom side. The same can be said for Gen.G as far as, you know, taking outer turrets, but you really want to be opening up the map. You want to be playing around the Zoe, allowing Canada to split in a side lane or add to the siege around these neutral objectives. But now I think even if they do that, Gen.G have hard engage options, and Rascal has been amazing on this Scion, being exactly where he needs to be. And if you're talking about hard engage, I don't think that there is anything more hard engaging than throwing a train into an enemy team, right? That's gonna do it.
And like, let me point everyone's attention to the vision score between these two junglers. Udyr is only up 6 in this game. He hasn't been able to have the same impact, and you know they've just cleared a little bit more of the vision away T1 have. But you know, just moments ago there were almost 0 blue wards on the map, and if you don't have vision, you can't walk forward into these brushes when there is that hard CC, there is that hard engage for Gen.G. They can blow up any single target. On the side of T1, they don't have a tank, they don't have a front line. And if you don't have vision, you just can't do a whole lot as T1. You can't even paddle star. You can't look for those trouble bubbles you were talking about. And that's a big problem, and it really limits the impact of the Udyr in this composition if he cannot consistently clear those wards.
Yeah. And it has to be a second item. Lord Dominic's out of Teddy makes sense, of course. Rascal exists, and Samira ain't gonna be doing damage to him. But the problem is he has a Thorn Mail already.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna need every single possible armor penetration item, and unfortunately, the percentage variety do not stack.
Unfortunately not.
Yeah, which, you know, maybe there should be some leniency on that. If there's a Scion opposing you, maybe we should lift that, because sometimes it feels like it's necessary. As, all right, Carrier just BDD says a casual drive-by. Nope.
Yeah, maybe that's part. They add that to part of Sion's passive.
Allows
the
his
whole
opponent.
team gets better at armor pen.
Yeah, nailed it.
Well, you know, Atlas, this is a semifinals and a spring season of LCK where people actually started bringing up the question of whether Ⅳ might start to surpass T1's legacy, SK Telecom T1 that is. And it was becoming such an insane finals potentially, right? Everyone predicted, minus, of course, ㅣ, that we were going to have that T1 Ⅳ finals where maybe a passing of the torch could even occur if Ⅳ won it. But T1 have to win now 3 games in a row in this best-of-5 to even get us there. And they are falling behind. They cannot even control Baron right now with this poke composition.
Yep, we'll see whether they can rain something in there. Of course, Cannon needs to be in position and Faker as well, but now the re-engage comes forward. We got a lot of buttons being pressed, and now maybe it's the opportunity for T1. But Clint goes golden right in the middle of it. You can see Ruler trying to do his best, but he's going to be taken down. The Baron helps him out. The Samira is dead, though, and now Gen G utilizing the more powerful wallets and just running at T1. That's a very short teleport. However,
short.
one that maybe Cuz not going to be able to... Yeah, you do get the extra movement speed from the teleport, but who was I kidding? It's Udyr. Once again, misjudging.
Even in the perfect team fight for T1 that you hope for, where you get the poke done, they already took damage from the Baron. They've been chipped down. You have the rail engage. Carrier comes through with a Magnet Storm, and even with the Magnet Storm, Teddy is not able to get that Inferno trigger cleanup. You don't get to see the amazing wipe. There's so much CC on the side of Gen G to interrupt him, and I believe it was actually Rascal with just a big, devastating smash that actually ends everything. Let's take a look at this fight once again. So look at the Gen G members. They're starting to get fairly low here. The Baron's being chipping. And look, you see the damage come through.
The was so good.
And Teddy comes in here after you see the Magnet Storm. But he's just not able to finish off any single member. He's just forever and ever stunned up here, and T1 don't have the damage to actually break through all the tankiness here. BDD free hitting, he's on the side here, has untouched in this team fight, sets up multiple stuns, and the turn is unreal. Gen G look to close this series out 3-0. It's not over yet, but they have a massive advantage.
Well, just enough mana to take the train. That's like when you're looking in your pocket and you've got some change and you're like, can I afford this train ticket? You know, like, have I got it? And he counts it and he's like, just about there, and nailed it.
That's like when you're, the last, you can't get a taxi in Korea. Around midnight it could be very difficult,
Yep, or 10 p.m. these days.
Yeah, 10 p.m. these days. You look at your phone, you're like, wow, next train in 5 minutes. I think if I walk to the station right now, I could still go home tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully for Rascal is certainly able to do it. Not so thankfully for T1. However, they did stop the Baron. They lost the fight. However, not a lot was gained outside of getting towards Soul Point. It's not the worst dragon to lose. No, next one is definitely that, but getting Gen G closer to that is definitely a problem. Okay. Hail Mary Baron time!
No vision here for Gen G. They have to push through. It's very difficult to use Gen G's comp here against this poke without vision. You can see how much damage you'll take.
It's a big teleport to come forward here as well, as Clid just says, I don't really mind about it being CC'd, but the Baron is turned away from Carrier, looking to try and get into position for this flank play.
They have to hard engage Gen G do, or they're going to lose this Baron.
He's outside of vision right now. Rascal getting chunked just a little bit. Clid down to half as well, as the Baron down to 2,000 health. Cuz is going to get stunned. Clid gets into the pit. Can he steal it away? The answer is no. He's just dead as T1 stop their damage. They take themselves to the Baron. Rascal flashes away. Very low health. Buzz is beating. Faker has exploded. Faker takes control. And Gen G have to walk away from a lost fight.
That's a massive pick on a BDD as well. He got greedy. He was trying to get some Scar of the Week value and maybe even a trading kill there, but it's not going to happen. And for the first time in these last 2 games for T1, their poke composition wins a team fight. It's all about vision control here. You can see the chip damage come through. Kliz at half health before he has to Ragnarok in, because if he doesn't, he cannot actually close the distance to the Baron to look for the 50-50. So he's, of course, immediately targeted down. Rascal's forced to flash over the wall. Look at where BDD goes. He actually does get slept before he hits the Scar of the Week, but Faker knew exactly where he was going. And the ultimate that comes back is not enough to kill him. You can see he can almost one-shot Faker at this stage in the game. But that was well played by T1. But this is the first of many victories T1 will need to take in order to take this game back. Now they need to wrestle back control of the vision on the map. Then you can look for potentially picks from Faker getting those trouble bubbles. This feels like this might be the turning point in this game, a potential comeback here in Game 3 that might lead to a comeback in this series.
Well, there's already a 3,000 Baron power play, and the more turrets they take, we've already spoken about this. It's so important to open the map for this composition, and now is their opportunity to do so. It's sort of like a 1-2 punch out of T1 with the composition that they have. They benefit so much from making the map dark.
Every time you're trying to walk down towards the middle of the map as Gen G, if you're having to dodge Trouble Bubbles and Paddle Stars, or you're eating those on your way towards the next Mountain Drake, for example, you're just going to be fighting half a team fight. You're going to be at half health before the fight even starts. And you can see Kana is really pushing the envelope here on the side lane, have the Baron minions. This is exactly how T1 need to play this, 4-1 it, and control that vision. Look at, there's not a single ward in this jungle here on the top side of the map, because it's just simply impossible to get in there and clear that away right now, which means T1 can pick anybody who gets caught by Faker. And Faker's kind of hovering between both sides as he gets to sleep. He might get a kill. He pops that Banshee's Veil.
Yeah, Banshee's Veil being down is important. This is a point in the game, actually, where Rascal is pretty happy to 1v1 against Kana. He's just so extraordinarily durable, especially now with Warmox completed on top of his Thornmail. Just not a lot of damage a lethality champion can actually do, despite the fact that he does have the Grudge available as well. Gen G, though, they are going to spot the fact that T1 decided to go bottom lane, and they're just going to cruise themselves up mid. See whether they can mitigate some of this pressure as Faker looks for the bubble under Ruler. Ruler just martially pushes away.
How is he here? There's pings coming up. Like, you can't let him push that hard. You're not getting that much done here. Like, Kana is just winning the game by himself right now. Gen G have to rotate so far back now.
This is just dead. That's an inhibitor taken.
Like, yeah, and guess what? He has teleport too, so you're going to lose the Drake as well.
Oh
Gen
no,
G,
this is on Vision.
Gen G!
They can stop this whenever they want. Bubble is just going to connect, and Rascal gets the bad news. Teleport out from Kana. Hasn't quite taken the inhibitor just yet, as that's the decimating smash. This is a big zoom out now, as you can see Clid trying to get away from Kana. The flash not quite enough. Meanwhile, on the other side of the fight, Faker is taken down by BDD, who's now desperately trying to get out of the way. Carrier goes golden, and Teddy gets stunned. Oh no, the scat of the week is a disaster, and now Ruler is bouncing over the fight. It's a triple kill so far, and Gen G lost no one.
BDD just won the game for Gen G. He's able to stun Teddy before he can use his Inferno trigger. Just as he hits his S rank, he's not able to pull it off, and he gets the kill onto Faker. At this stage in the game, you can one-shot a Zoe. BDD once again comes up big. A player we haven't talked about. You talk about the 4 kings of the LCK, and BDD has been one of the quiet ones this season, but he comes back big in this series, Atlas, and I think he might have just put them into the grand finals.
This is extraordinary. Gen G now pushing on the Nexus turrets. Kana, the only man that can save it. Carrier up in a couple of seconds. Teddy in 5. Nexus turret number 1 goes down. Carrier desperately trying to be the hero, but the Nexus is exposed, and T1 have been 3-0'd by Gen G.
Unbelievable turn of events here. Only one Korean analyst predicted Gen G to go to the grand finals, but they stomp and destroy T1 in 3 very dominant games, in 3 completely different playstyles. Games 1 and 2, slow tempo-based play to aggressive, and in Game 3 we play the more aggressive version of the Game 2 composition. T1 get ahead, but make a few small execution mistakes, and BDD is there to scoop it up once again. The compositions we saw from T1 tonight were so hard to execute. They put everything on the line in this series. They went down 0-2, but had no fear. They put Teddy on his 2nd career game of Samira with a poke composition, but the execution just wasn't there. There was too much CC, and Gen G have done what almost no one predicted, and we have an amazing grand finals here. Gen G, remember, coming off a win against T1ㅅ in the last match. It doesn't get much more exciting than this. We talked about this is the season of upsets. You can never expect the expected in LCK 2021.
Well, I mean, I want to take you through a little bit of a journey as to why Gen G wasn't our prediction for this one. 2016 summer, playoffs round 1, KT 3-0 them. 2017 spring, KT 3-0 them. Round 1, 2017 summer, SKT 3-0s them. T1 then 3-0s them again in the spring finals that you guys may remember from last year. Then they managed to find a 3-0 against Afrika in the first round of the playoffs, and then they get 3-2'd by DRX. These are their playoff performances over the last almost 5 years. Gen G just haven't been able to get themselves together. This was decisive, this was intelligent, and it was patient from Gen G. 3 things that we have not been able to say about this team in playoffs for a really long time.
And definitely not all in the same best of 5, that is for sure. As we just saw the replay of BDD scatter the weak, instantly executing Faker. Then you see the Alistair come in, pulverize Teddy. You see the follow-up scatter the weak there from BDD. He's unable to Inferno trigger, and it looks like that might have been another one of those fights where the T1 composition actually comes online. We finally get to see Inferno trigger value. Finally, Teddy gets to do something in this game. But Teddy is a poke champion player. He's the one who likes to do slow, sustained damage in the late game. Samira, not in his wheelhouse. Not to say he can't play it, but this is a little bit unusual for him. You would expect that T1 would be playing Gumayusi if they're going to run a comp like this, but that's not what they're playing anymore. Gumayusi's on the bench. Teddy's the main AD carry. And unfortunately, even with this risky draft, they're not able to pull out a W, and they had such a great lead in this game. It felt like maybe this series could really turn around. But Gen.G and BDD, they said no, and I cannot believe that that is the score of this series.
I mean, I can believe the score. I just can't believe the names, right? I think this is just extraordinary for Gen.G. And I think something that is going to be really, really important for this organization moving forward, because they've had this monkey on their back for so long. Not only playoffs being a real problem, but also the team of T1 in playoffs has also been a huge issue.
They've been unshackled, Gen.G
now they've taken them all away, and they're coming into a final against a T1ㅅ that looked utterly unstoppable in their 3-0 performance against Humble Life Esports, but they probably should have, and it's a 3-0 that Gen.G are coming off as well, against a team that's arguably in better form at that point in time, despite what the standings say. This really is setting us up for a finals that is extraordinarily exciting, and I think far more difficult to predict now that Gen.G have showed us that they exist in a playoffs capacity as well, instead of just being the regular season gods.
I mean, if Gen.G are able to take out, we're going to take a look at our highlights, but just hear me out. If Gen.G are able to take out T1ㅅ in this finals, right? T1ㅅ is starting to eclipse SK Telecom T1's legacy, and that was one of the things we talked about in that Game 3 about, you know, how hyped the finals would have been if T1 made it. I think a lot of people really wanted that finals. Obviously, T1 fans are probably the biggest group of people in terms of LCK fans anywhere. But now, you know, we have this opportunity for Gen.G to not only unshackle themselves in terms of their defeat of T1, the team that has historically stopped them in these important playoffs, to take a 3-0 win in playoffs. Extremely good form for BDD finally this season. And if they're able to stop T1ㅅ, who are about to create a new Korean dynasty, I mean, this would be the best one you could ever get. I mean, Gen.G have had a few seasons where it looks like maybe they're going to take the season, but then fall short